The film is called A Shock to the System, and it stars Michael Caine as a corporate executive who learns, much like Martin Landau in Crimes and Misdemeanors, that you literally in this life can get away with murder. What puts Caine in a murderous mood is when he is passed over for a promotion at work.
You didn't get it, Graham. You're not the one.
Caine soon turns on his nagging wife, played by Swoosie Kurtz.
I mean, part of what helps you get ahead is having a wife from a good family who looks nice and a house near George and all the proper things. And you can't blame me just because I sign the checks when really...
Leslie. Come up here. I want to show you how to fix the lights.
But Caine also has a grudge against Peter Riegert, the pickle salesman from Crossing Delancey. Remember him? He got the job Michael Caine wanted.
Yes. I chaired that meeting, Bob. Well, actually, you have chaired it in the past, Graham, and frankly, that's because George was too apathetic to take care of it himself. It is a meeting of department heads, after all.
The other woman in Caine's life is a winsome executive played by Elizabeth McGovern, who consoles Caine after his wife's mysterious death.
What if we had dinner?
I give up. What if we had dinner?
Tonight.
Tonight. Okay.
And their relationship takes a few surprising turns, too. What's good in A Shock to the System, aside from the script, is Michael Caine, who grounds this preposterous black comedy in reality with his world-weary brightness. Caine brings such credibility to every role he plays, and he does it again in A Shock to the System. Outrageous behavior, to be sure, but it's always rooted in a real guy in real work situation.
I wonder if people realize what a good actor Michael Caine is. I mean, he has said that he has modeled himself on people like Spencer Tracy, who never seem to be trying, and never seem to be reaching too hard for a role. And certainly he is so comfortable in every one of the characters he plays. A real-life guy like this, or even somebody like Sherlock Holmes, a totally unrealistic guy, he's so comfortable inside the skin of those characters that there's a conviction that's just there. It's not anything he does, it's just there. There's a relaxation, and there's a joy of performance that you feel, even in a dark comedy
like this. Well, I was
going
to say, what I notice when I see him is that he doesn't push lines out too fast. He is confident enough, and Tracy probably did it better, of walking through a passage. Early in this film, we see him walk through the offices, and he doesn't have anything to say. And to be able to not recite the line right away, always be with the line, means it's a real person. That's the way real people walk. And I thought that was great of him.
He does another thing. He does it in several movies, including this one. He's called upon to play a character who has a big ego that is easily offended. Now, you can play that in such a way that people find the person offensive, or you can play it in such a way that you identify. Now, in this movie, I identified with him. He wants the office, he wants the promotion, he wants the job, he thinks he's more important than this pipsqueak, and he's got a big ego to deal with it, but at the same time, you sympathize with him. He gets you on his side.
Well, in that way, the film is a good workplace picture. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that these executives who take these trains and go, they're like cattle to slaughter, sometimes at least emotional slaughter. He shows that, and for that, I enjoy that within a black comedy.
Yeah.
When we come back, Roy Scheider is a hero without a cause in the Fourth War.
Fourth War, and it stars Roy Scheider as an Army colonel who was a genuine hero once, long ago and far away in Vietnam, but has been an embarrassment to the Army ever since. After sweating out a series of backwater commands, he's finally returned to the front lines, which is the border between West Germany and Czechoslovakia in 1988, the last days of the Cold War. And right away, he's in an eyeball-to-eyeball confrontation with his Russian counterpart. That's Jürgen Prochnow as the enemy commander, and they begin a personal vendetta. Meanwhile, Scheider's second-in-command, played by Tim Reed, keeps a close eye on it.
You filed a report on me, and you sent it to division headquarters, didn't you?
Sir, now is not the time.
Or file a report on me, outside the chain of command. Now, I want to know under whose authority you did that, and I want to know it now.
Scheider's commanding officer, a general played with gritty conviction by Harry Dean Stanton, begins to wonder why he took a chance on this guy.
He can't be trusted for 5 minutes. He's been shuffled through the Army more times than a deck of cards. Bangkok, Manila, Guam. And on each and every assignment, you spelled trouble.
Finally, Scheider goes too far. He goes on an unauthorized personal mission across the border and is repaid with a surprise visit by the Russian on West German turf.
If you come over the border one more time, you'll never make it back. Because I, personally, will kill you.
I don't know if this is the last Cold War movie or the first detente movie. There's a lot of dialogue about how the real role of the U.S. Army here is to do a good public relations job. The Fourth War isn't really a war movie anyway, but a psychological study, the portrait of a man cracking up because he's been trained to do a job that is now obsolete. The film was directed by John Frankenheimer, and there were some parallels here with Frankenheimer's great movie, The Manchurian Candidate. Both films are about men who become the victims of their own programming.
And so you liked it?
Yes.
And I did too. I was caught up right in the beginning with basically the snowball fight.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't like that just for the obvious reason, which is, okay, the snowball fight mirrors the futility of battle, and that's all that these guys are really doing. I liked it as a visual exercise, and the way that he took what is sort of a dead action moment to lead off his film with. I thought that was a gutty play. This is a film that could have come out of the 50s, directed by Sam Fuller, talking about these sort of old-timers, these rebel guys, and I'm not sure what he thinks about this guy. And I like watching the picture through. It isn't so clear that he's saying this is, like Patton. You knew that Coppola was in love with Patton. I mean, here, I don't know exactly what Frankenheimer's position is, but I like it. I like that it's left open-ended. The guy is sort of out of it in some way, that he gets in the snowball fight, but he's, in a war, you need this kind of guy.
And
maybe that's what Coppola was saying.
Coppola wrote the screenplay for Patton.
That's exactly what I mean. Franklin Schaffner wrote it.
The difference between Patton and between this character played by Roy Scheider, of course, is that Scheider is not a leader of men. In fact, just the opposite. He is probably the worst commanding officer I've ever seen in an American war movie. He is absolutely out there on his own. He's obviously over the edge. He's an alcoholic. He's spaced out most of the time. He has this horrible relationship with his family at home and with his children, and he spends most of his time hiding in the woods like some Boy Scout playing at war games. It's a fascinating character portrait of this kind of behavior.
Aren't you glad that there is at least room, at least from Frankenheimer here, to make that kind of a small essay? This film is an essay rather than a big-scale picture. We're living in a film time when it has to be $25 million all the time. It has to make a big, clear statement. This picture is more idiosyncratic, more interesting. The whole portrayal of the country club life that they have, a PR move, as you called it, of having the Army there as PR, and then in comes this wild card.
It's an interesting film. Coming up next, a review of one of the new Lambada dance movies. It's called Lambada, and so that makes the title very easy to remember.
What is that?
Dance films brought about by the publicity surrounding a bump-and-grind Brazilian dance craze. Basically, you just hook pelvises and go at it on the dance floor. Now, I had very low expectations when I went to see this film, and yet I enjoyed it, much to my amazement. There is something, I think, about the dance musical form that can override even the most hackneyed script. Lambada is a story of a high school math teacher with a split personality. By day, he teaches rich kids. By night, he returns to his Latino roots and dances at the local club where Lambada is the rage.
Mind if I cut in? Oh, yeah.
Hey, what are you doing here?
After dancing, he teaches the local poor kids some math so they can get a high school diploma. Lambada concludes not with a dance contest, as you might expect, but with a math contest between the rich and the poor. J.N.E. Peck is solid as the teacher, and Melora Hardin is captivating, I think, as the student who is infatuated with him. They're both very good on the dance floor, even though the director, Joe Silberg, doesn't know how to shoot the full-length dancer's body, like Fred Astaire used to do. He's always shooting mostly from the butt up. This movie becomes an instant guilty pleasure for me, a film I'm almost embarrassed to admit